You ever agree to something that sounds innocent in the moment? Totally casual, no big deal, and then halfway through you're like, wait, what the hell is actually happening? That's exactly how this started. I was sitting on the floor of our living room, legs stretched out, hunched over my laptop, trying to finish this brutal marketing paper for class. My back had been killing me for days. Too many hours crammed into the world's worst desk chair. Too many stress naps on our lumpy couch. It didn't help that my roommate, Jordan, insisted on keeping the living room window cracked even in October, so the draft only made me more tense. I must have groaned, or shifted weird, or said something out loud without meaning to, because suddenly Jordan's voice came from behind me. Dude, you're moving like a 90-year-old? You good? I looked up, trying not to sound too whiny. My upper back is wrecked. Been like this since Tuesday. I can't even sit still without wanting to crack something. He smirked. Jordan always had that kind of smirk that looked a little too confident, like he was up to something. You want me to fix it? I raised an eyebrow. What, you suddenly got a degree in physical therapy? Nah, he shrugged, walking around the couch to sit on the armrest. But I dated a guy who was studying sports medicine. He taught me a few things. Trust me, I've got magic hands. I rolled my eyes. You mean you learned massage moves from your ex? He taught me some stuff. The rest I figured out by trial and error, he said with a grin. Come on, lay down. I'm serious, I can help. There was a beat of hesitation. I wasn't sure why. Jordan and I weren't new to being around each other casually. We were pretty chill roommates, actually. He was the funny one, the talkative one, the guy who walked around barefoot and drank green smoothies. I was more low-key, a little more guarded. I never got flirty with him. Not that I didn't think about it. I just always figured it wasn't worth making things weird. Still, my back was killing me. All right, I muttered, rolling onto my stomach and setting my glasses on the coffee table. But if you mess me up worse, I'm sleeping on your bed. He laughed and cracked his knuckles. Deal. Jordan sat cross-legged beside me and pulled my shirt up just enough to expose my lower back. I tensed automatically. Nobody had touched me like that in a while. His hands were warm when they made contact, firmer than I expected. Not rough, but confident. He pressed his thumbs along the sides of my spine, slowly working upward. Jesus, he muttered. You're tight as hell. What have you been doing, lifting textbooks with your teeth? School? Work? Life? I grunted into the rug. All of the above. He hummed thoughtfully and kept going, his fingers moving in slow, deliberate circles. It didn't take long for my muscles to start giving in. The tension I didn't even realize I was holding started to loosen, and for a few minutes I stopped thinking entirely. That was the problem, because after a while, the massage started feeling different. It wasn't just his hands working out knots. It was the way his fingers lingered a second too long in one spot. The way his thumb traced lower, past the safe zone of my shoulder blades. The way he shifted his weight beside me. Closer now, so I could feel his knee brushing against my thigh. I opened my mouth to say something, maybe crack a joke, maybe pull away. But then he leaned down and murmured, almost absently, You're really warm. The hell was that supposed to mean? You okay? I asked, my voice muffled by the floor. Yeah, he said quietly, but his hands were slower now. Less like he was trying to help me, and more like he was exploring something. One hand stayed pressed to my lower back, while the other slid gently over my ribs, thumb brushing my side. I froze. Jordan? I said, trying to sound light. This still part of the lesson? He didn't answer right away. Then I felt him exhale. Close. Way too close. His breath grazed the back of my neck. You want me to stop? He asked, voice barely audible. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because truthfully, I didn't know what I wanted. And then his fingers moved just slightly lower, testing the boundary between safe and something else entirely. And I didn't stop him. I should have said something. That would have been the logical thing to do. Say a word, make a joke, shift away, draw the line. But instead, I just lay there, still, warm, breath shallow, while Jordan's hand hovered, lingered, and finally settled just at the small of my back, fingers splayed casually, like this was no big deal. Like touching me that way was totally normal. It wasn't. We'd been living together for almost a year, and until that night, we had never crossed any sort of boundary. Sure, Jordan walked around the apartment shirtless constantly, and yeah, I might have caught myself staring more times than I'd like to admit. But I had rules. Internal boundaries. One of them being, don't mess around with someone you live with, especially someone you didn't know was even into you. And yet, here I was, letting my roommate straddle the line between casual and something else. His hands moved again, slower this time, down across the sides of my lower back, fingertips dipping just barely beneath the waistband of my sweatpants. I didn't move. I didn't stop him. It was like we were both waiting to see how far the other would let it go. "You're not saying anything," he said quietly, breaking the silence. "You're not exactly giving me a reason to," I replied, trying to sound calm, even though my pulse was hammering like crazy. He chuckled. Low, nervous maybe, or something else. "You're not stopping me either." I shifted slightly, turning my face to the side so I could speak without eating the carpet. "That's supposed to mean something?" He didn't answer right away, just exhaled again, soft and steady. Then, gently, he leaned over me, his chest pressing lightly against my back. Not full weight, just enough to feel him there. His lips were near my ear now, and I could feel the warmth of his breath when he whispered, "I've thought about this before." That sentence. It hit me like a goddamn truck. I turned my head just enough to catch him in my peripheral, and for the first time, he didn't look like the effortlessly cool, barefoot smoothie-drinking goof I'd known for months. He looked serious. Vulnerable, even. "You've thought about what?" I asked, though I already knew. He didn't pull back, didn't laugh it off. "Touching you like this," he said. "Seeing how you'd react. Wondering if you'd let me." A million things flooded my brain. Half of them were alarm bells, the other half were not. I wanted to ask why. When? If this was just some impulsive, post-breakup experiment. He'd mentioned a guy months ago, one of those complicated exes he never really talked about. But instead, what I said was, "And now?" His lips brushed my neck. Not a kiss. Not quite. Just the lightest touch. "I don't know," he said, barely audible. "You tell me." The room was dead silent, except for the faint hum of the fridge. In the kitchen, the air was warm from the heat of his body against mine. My mind felt like it had slowed to molasses, but my senses were on fire. Everything about his touch, his voice, even his weight on the back of my thighs. It was like my body was responding before I could rationalize it, so I shifted again, just enough to give him room. He pulled back slightly, lifting off of me. I pushed up onto my elbows, finally turning to look at him. His face was flushed, eyes searching mine like he was waiting for permission, or an explosion. I sat up fully, crossing my legs, and his hand fell away from my back as I moved. For a second, the tension broke. I looked at him, studied the way his gaze flickered between my mouth and my eyes. He wasn't smiling now. "You're serious about this?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "I thought you were just screwing around," I added. "I wasn't," he said. "Well, at first it was just a massage. I swear, but then you didn't stop me, and I didn't want to stop." He looked nervous, the kind of nervous that made me realize this wasn't some joke or test. I'd never seen him like this before. "You want to tell me what's actually going on?" I asked, voice softer now. "Because this doesn't seem like something you just do on a whim." Jordan took a breath, sat back on his heels. He wasn't touching me now. "Honestly, I don't know. I've been thinking about it for a while. You. Us. I kept pushing it down because I didn't want to mess up what we have. But tonight, when I saw you lying there, and I touched you, and you let me, He trailed off. I swallowed. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. He looked up. "Are you sure? Because this could get really weird." I gave him a small smile. It's already weird. That made him laugh, just a little. He leaned forward again, tentative this time. I don't want to screw this up, he said. You might already have, I replied, but there was no anger in my voice, only truth. Or you might have just changed everything. We sat there for a long moment, the tension still thick, but different now. Muted, like neither of us wanted to be the first to make the next move. Finally, he stood up, brushing off his sweatpants. I should let you get back to your paper, he said, voice a little too casual. I blinked. That's it, he shrugged. I meant it when I said I don't want to screw this up. I'll back off if that's what you want. I stood too. What if I'm not sure what I want? He looked at me with something like hope flickering behind his eyes. Then maybe we figure it out. Slowly, my mouth opened, but no words came out. Not yet. I just nodded. And then he did something simple. Something small. He reached out and gently ran his thumb across the back of my hand. No expectations, no rush. Just a question, waiting for an answer. The next morning was weird. Not dramatic, not full-blown awkward. Just off. Like the apartment had absorbed the tension from the night before, and now everything had a slightly different gravity to it. Same furniture, same morning light leaking through the blinds, but nothing felt the same. I found Jordan in the kitchen, barefoot, hair messy, hoodie half-zipped. He was pouring himself coffee like it was any other Thursday, and maybe for him it was. Morning, he said, glancing up at me over his mug. Hey, I replied, voice hoarse from sleep. For a second, neither of us said anything else. He sipped his coffee, leaned against the counter. I grabbed a glass from the cabinet, trying to act normal, but my body still remembered the way his hands had felt. The way his thumb had brushed just under the hem of my sweatpants. The way he'd whispered into my ear like we weren't just two roommates who split the rent and shared takeout. How's your back? He asked casually, but there was something behind the question. A test, maybe. I gave a small shrug, not looking at him. Sore. Better. See? Told you I had magic hands. I gave him a look. Pretty sure that went beyond massage territory. He didn't deny it, just looked into his mug, a hint of a smile on his lips. You said you've thought about it before, I said quietly, finally turning to face him fully. Was that real, or just something to say in the moment? His expression shifted. No more smirk. Just honesty. It was real. I nodded slowly, heart pounding a little. So, now what? He raised an eyebrow. What do you want now? That question landed harder than I expected. I'd spent the whole night tossing between thoughts like, do I want this? Am I just curious? Will it ruin everything if I say yes? But I didn't have any clean answers. I don't know, I admitted. I wasn't expecting any of this. Jordan set his coffee down and crossed his arms, leaning back against the counter. Look, I meant what I said. I don't want to screw things up. We've got a good thing here. I like living with you. I like hanging out. But I'm not gonna lie, last night didn't feel wrong to me. It felt kind of overdue. That word. Overdue. Like we'd both been circling this, brushing shoulders, sharing moments we pretended were casual. Like we both knew, deep down there was more under the surface and had just never dared to name it. I just didn't think you were into guys like that, I said, still trying to catch up to where he already was. I'm into people, he said, shrugging. Always have been. I don't go around announcing it, but yeah. I've been with guys before. Girls, too. You're the first person in a while that actually made me hesitate. Why? Because you actually matter. That shut me up for a second. He walked past me, not touching, but close enough to brush against my shoulder like an echo of the night before. He stopped at the hallway entrance, half turning back to look at me. Let me know if you want to pick up where we left off, he said, or if you want to pretend it never happened. I'll respect either. And then he walked off to his room. I stood there for a long moment, staring into my half-full glass of water, heart doing backflips in my chest. Every instinct I had was screaming different things. Caution, curiosity, desire, fear. But most of all, I kept replaying the way he'd touched me, how careful he'd been, how it hadn't felt like a joke or some experiment. It had felt deliberate, focused, real. I spent the next few hours pretending to work. The marketing paper on my laptop stayed mostly untouched while I scrolled through old photos on my phone, mostly of us. Jordan at the beach, Jordan at the sink washing dishes shirtless, Jordan asleep on the couch with his hoodie pulled up over his face. Moments I'd cataloged without thinking about why. Now I couldn't stop thinking. By early evening, I found myself hovering outside his door. It was cracked open slightly, and I could hear the faint strum of his acoustic guitar, something he only played when he thought no one was listening. I knocked twice. "Yeah?" he called, the strumming stopping. I pushed the door open. He was sitting cross-legged on his bed, guitar in his lap, hair tucked behind one ear, eyes curious. "Can I come in?" I asked, voice low. "Always." I stepped inside and shut the door behind me, the soft click feeling louder than it should have. He set the guitar aside without saying anything. "I don't want to pretend it didn't happen," I said, "but I also don't want to rush into something just because it felt good." Jordan nodded, quiet, listening. "I want to figure this out," I added. Slowly, if that's still an option. A small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "It is." He patted the spot beside him on the bed. I walked over and sat down, leaving just enough space between us that the tension stayed, but didn't suffocate. He looked over at me. "You nervous?" "Kind of." He leaned in slightly. "Want me to help with that?" I swallowed. "Maybe." And then, softly, cautiously, he reached over and rested a hand on my thigh. Just his palm. No pressure, no expectation, just contact. I didn't flinch, didn't pull away. Instead, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. And for the first time all day, I didn't feel uncertain anymore. We didn't kiss that night. I think a part of me expected that once I crossed the threshold into his room, once his hand touched my leg, that something more dramatic would follow. A kiss, a confession, maybe something heavier. But instead, we just sat there, and that felt right. Jordan's hand stayed on my thigh, warm and steady, not inching higher, not probing, just resting there, anchoring us in whatever this new space was. "You're shaking," he said softly, glancing sideways at me. I looked down at my hands, which were balled into fists on my lap. I hadn't noticed. "It's not a bad thing," I said. "It's just a lot." "Yeah," he murmured. "I get it." Silence settled over us again, not awkward, just thoughtful. The kind of silence you only get with someone who actually knows how to share space. Jordan was good at that. He always had been. He didn't fill the room with noise just because he could. He didn't need to. "I meant what I said before," he added a moment later. "I don't want to mess this up. I know, and I don't expect you to figure everything out right now." "I'm not trying to figure everything out," I said. "Just the next step." Jordan smiled faintly, then leaned back on his hands, stretching his legs out. His thigh brushed mine, and he didn't move away. "Well, if step one was that massage, we're already off to a decent start." I gave a small laugh. "You're proud of that, huh?" "Very." We stayed like that for a while. He eventually picked up the guitar again and started strumming something soft and wordless. I lay back on his bed and stared at the ceiling, letting the quiet fill me. There was something about being in his room that felt weirdly intimate. Not because of anything overt. He wasn't exactly the type to hang suggestive art or have black satin sheets, but because this was his space. His scent clung to the pillows. His hoodie was tossed across the foot of the bed. His sketchbook was half open on the floor, next to a pair of socks he clearly hadn't noticed in a week. And for the first time, I wasn't just a roommate here. I was something else. Something I didn't have a name for yet. At some point, he stopped playing and shifted to lie down beside me, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the bed dip under his weight. I turned my head toward him and found him already watching me. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. Just thinking. About everything. He smiled. Same. We didn't sleep in the same bed that night. When I eventually got up to leave, he didn't ask me to stay. He just walked me to the door, brushed his knuckles against the back of my hand, and said, "Good night." I slept surprisingly well. The next few days were strange, but in a way that felt kind of good. Like we'd shifted into a new version of ourselves without breaking the old one. We still did all our usual stuff. Made dinner, argued over what to watch on Netflix, traded jabs while brushing our teeth. But now there were pauses in the middle of things. Moments when he'd glance at me a little longer than necessary. When I'd catch myself staring at his hands or wondering what it would be like if I leaned in just a little closer. On Saturday, he came up behind me while I was doing dishes and pressed his palm lightly to the curve of my lower back. I froze for a second, not because it felt wrong, but because it didn't. "You tense again?" he asked, his voice low. "A little. Should I help with that?" I turned to face him, hands still wet and soapy. "You offering another massage?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. His eyes dropped to my mouth before meeting my gaze again. "If you want." I dried my hands and followed him to the living room. This time, I lay down on the couch without hesitation. This time, I knew what I was saying yes to. He didn't speak as he straddled the back of my thighs, his knees on either side of me. I could feel the heat of his body above mine, the careful tension in his hands as he slid them beneath my shirt, palms meeting bare skin. He started at my shoulders, slow and firm, thumbs digging in just enough to make me exhale. Then he worked his way down, over the ridges of my spine, the sides of my ribs, the dip of my lower back. It wasn't clinical. It wasn't about muscles or pressure points anymore. It was about touch. And this time, there was no mistaking the intention behind it when his fingers brushed just beneath the waistband of my sweatpants again. I didn't flinch. I arched slightly, without even realizing I had done it. I heard the breath catch in his throat. "You're warm," he whispered. "You already said that last time." "Yeah, but it's still true." His hands slid slowly along my sides, thumbs grazing the slope of my hips. I turned my head to the side, resting it against the couch cushion, eyes half closed. "Is this still a massage?" I murmured. "Technically," he said, breath hot against my neck. I felt him shift, lean in just enough that his chest pressed gently against my back, his lips inches from my skin. "Tell me if you want me to stop," he said. I didn't. I didn't say anything at all. Instead, I reached one hand back, blindly, and felt his fingers lace with mine. It's strange how quiet things get when something crosses the line between maybe and definitely. There was no turning back now. Not after I reached back and laced my fingers through his. Not after the silence that followed, the kind of silence that hangs heavy, electric, like the room itself was holding its breath. Jordan didn't say anything. He didn't have to. He just let our hands stay there, tangled together, while his other hand moved slowly along the bare skin of my waist. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't rushed. If anything, it felt careful. Like he didn't want to spook me. Like he needed me to know I was still in control. And I did. That was the surprising part. I didn't feel overwhelmed or out of my depth, even though this was new. Even though it was him. I felt grounded. I felt wanted. "You okay?" he asked quietly, his thumb brushing the inside of my wrist. "Yeah," I whispered. I didn't move. I didn't pull away. I just let myself feel it. His warmth, the slow drag of his fingertips, the weight of his body just barely pressing down on mine. It wasn't about closeness, not yet. It was about intimacy, about giving permission without saying the words out loud. Eventually, he leaned in closer. His nose brushed the back of my neck, just barely. His lips followed, grazing the skin there like he was memorizing it. I shivered. "Sorry," he murmured. "Too much?" I shook my head. Just not what I expected from a roommate massage, I said, smiling into the couch cushion. He laughed softly. You're not wrong. He shifted then, slowly pulling away, and I felt the warmth of him disappear from my back. When I rolled over to look at him, he was sitting on the edge of the couch now, one leg folded under him, watching me with something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Not lust, not even affection exactly. It was more like vulnerability. I didn't plan for any of this, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. I wasn't trying to, seduce you or whatever. It kind of happened. I let it happen, I said. It wasn't just you. He nodded, still not quite meeting my eyes. I sat up, my shirt still rumpled around my chest, and reached out to touch his knee. Jordan? He looked up. I liked it, I said. That broke something. The tension cracked and turned into something softer. He smiled. Relieved, maybe. Maybe something more. And that was the moment it changed again. Because the next thing he did was lean forward and kiss me. It wasn't intense. It wasn't one of those movie kisses where everything turns cinematic. It was tentative, cautious. Just a press of lips and the faint scent of whatever soap he used. But it was also real, and it sent a jolt through me that I wasn't ready for. His hand came up to my jaw, holding me there as our mouths moved in sync. My hands found his shoulders, fingers curling into the soft fabric of his hoodie. There was a quiet sound in the back of his throat, half a sigh, half a hum, and it pulled something out of me I didn't even realize I'd been holding back. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing a little heavier. He rested his forehead against mine. You taste like coffee. You taste like protein powder, I replied, and he laughed again, this time with less nervousness, more ease. We stayed like that for a long moment, just touching, breathing, existing in this new space we'd created between us. Then he sat back slightly, his expression turning more serious. What does this mean, he asked, for us? I exhaled, feeling the weight of that question settle in my chest. I don't know yet. But you're not freaking out? I shook my head. Not freaking out. Good. He paused. Because I'm definitely into this, into you, and I'd like to see where it goes, if you're open to that. I looked at him, really looked, and realized how rare this was, how rare he was. Not just for being open or for reading me so well, but for the way he made it all feel. Safe, like I could figure it out without pressure or shame. I'm open, I said. He smiled. Cool. Then he stood up and stretched, his shirt lifting to expose a strip of skin that made me immediately have to look away or lose focus. He noticed and smirked. You checking me out already? Shut up, I muttered. I'm just saying, if you want another massage. Don't push your luck. He laughed and walked into the kitchen, leaving me there on the couch, heart pounding, thoughts swirling. I ran a hand through my hair and let myself smile. Things were about to get a lot more complicated, but maybe also a lot more worth it. The first time we slept in the same bed, it wasn't planned. We'd both crashed on the couch after staying up way too late binge-watching some reality show Jordan was obsessed with. I woke up around 3 a.m., stiff and freezing, because the blanket we'd been sharing had mostly migrated to his side. I shifted to get more of it and accidentally elbowed him in the ribs. He groaned. Bro. Sorry. I'm dying over here. He pulled the blanket back over me without opening his eyes. Come to bed, I blinked. Yours or mine? Yours. Your mattress is softer. You always complain about mine. I don't. Don't argue. Just go. I'll meet you there. I waited for a few seconds, assuming he was going to pass out again. But then he stood, ran a hand through his messy hair, and yawned like he hadn't just casually invited himself into a whole new level of intimacy. 10 minutes later, we were lying in my bed, still fully clothed, him on top of the covers and me under them. The room was dark, except for the faint glow of the street lamp outside the window. I could hear his breathing settle, steady and familiar. "Still cold?" he murmured. "Not really." Good. He didn't move closer, didn't try anything. Just lay there beside me like it was the most natural thing in the world. And somehow, it was. I think that was the real turning point. Not the massage, not the kiss. This. The quiet togetherness. The comfort. The way I didn't feel nervous around him anymore. By the next morning, we'd shifted in our sleep. I woke up to find his arms slung loosely over my waist, and my face half buried in his hoodie. I didn't move for a long time. Just listened to him breathe and felt the weight of his hand on me. There was something so simple about it. And in that simplicity, something huge. We didn't label anything right away. That was the unspoken rule between us. No pressure. No declarations. Just whatever this was, unfolding day by day. But things did change. Little things, like the way he started brushing his teeth in the morning with me instead of waiting until I left the bathroom. The way his hand would find mine under the table when we were watching something together. The way his voice softened when he said my name. And then there was the moment I knew, without a doubt, that this wasn't just a phase or some random experiment for either of us. It was a Thursday night. I'd had a long day. Group project gone sideways, a brutal class presentation, and a headache that wouldn't quit. I came home late, head pounding, and Jordan was already in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. He turned when he heard the door. "Hey, you look like death. Feel worse. Come here." I dropped my bag and walked over, expecting a hug or maybe a forehead kiss if he was feeling bold. But instead he took one look at me, turned off the stove, and guided me to the couch. "Lie down," he said. "Jordan, no arguing, just do it." I lay down. He disappeared into the bathroom and came back with a bottle of ibuprofen, a glass of water, and a cold compress wrapped in one of our kitchen towels. He handed me the pills and water, then gently laid the compress across my forehead. His hand brushed back my hair. "You didn't have to." "Yeah, I did," he said. "You do that for me all the time. Let me take care of you for once." I stared up at him, heart full to the point of bursting. It was such a simple moment, but it meant everything. He sat beside me and let me rest my head on his lap. His fingers traced slow lines through my hair while I closed my eyes and let the tension start to melt away. "You're good at this," I murmured. "Good at what?" "Being whatever this is." He didn't speak right away, just kept stroking my hair. Then he said, "I don't think I've ever wanted something to work this badly." I opened my eyes, looked up at him. He wasn't smiling, he was serious. "I know I'm not perfect," he went on. "I've messed up a lot of stuff before. I get in my head. I push people away. I don't always know what I want. But with you, it's different." I sat up slowly, turning to face him. "You're not pushing me away." "Not yet," he said, half smiling. "But I could. I might. That's kind of how I'm wired. If I ever start to mess this up, just tell me. Don't walk away without saying something, okay?" I took his hand and squeezed it. "Okay. And you'll tell me if I'm the one being too much? You haven't been yet." "Even with the massages?" he teased. "That's an exception," I said, laughing softly. He leaned forward, kissed me gently. "Just checking." That night, he stayed again. This time, under the covers. This time, holding me from behind like he didn't want to let go. And I didn't want him to. You never really know the moment something becomes permanent. It doesn't come with a big announcement or a milestone you can circle on a calendar. Sometimes it just sneaks up on you, quiet, casual, and then one day you look around and realize, this is it. This is your life now. That realization hit me on a rainy Sunday morning, maybe a month after all of this started. I was standing in the kitchen making coffee, shirtless, hair a mess, Jordan's hoodie hanging off my frame like it belonged to me now, which apparently it did. He came up behind me, still groggy, pressed his chest to my back, and wrapped his arms around my waist without saying anything. Just held me there, half asleep, face nuzzled into the side of my neck. And it wasn't weird. It wasn't a moment. It was just us. That was when I knew. We never had the talk. No dramatic, "what are we" conversation. It just unfolded. Gradually. Naturally. Friends who became something more and forgot to go back. We started sleeping in the same bed every night. At first, it was under the excuse of, "it's just easier," or "your room has better airflow." But eventually, neither of us bothered with the lies. We just belonged there, side by side. He started doing little things I didn't even notice until much later. Grabbing my favorite granola when he grocery shopped, setting my laptop charger on the couch because he knew I'd forget it, rubbing my neck with those damn magic hands when he could tell I was tense before I even said a word. I found myself waiting for him to get home even when I didn't mean to. I started cooking more because he said he liked when I did. I left him dumb notes in the bathroom mirror with dry erase markers, and he'd write back with smiley faces and crude jokes. It all felt ridiculously easy, but there were still moments that made it clear just how deep we were in this. Like the time we ran into a friend of his at a bar, some guy from his old gym, and the second the dude started talking about intimate stories from college, Jordan reached for my hand under the table and didn't let go. Or the night I had a stupid argument with a professor and came home ready to implode, and Jordan just pulled me into a hug before I even said a word. Held me for minutes. Didn't try to fix anything. Just let me exist. That night, after I'd calmed down and we were lying in bed, he rolled over and kissed the side of my face. "You're safe here," he said, like it wasn't even a question. I think I fell a little more in love with him right then. That word, love, we hadn't said it yet, not out loud. But it was there, under everything. It was in the way he looked at me when I walked into the room, the way I reached for him without thinking, the way we touched each other like we were made to. It was in the nights we fell asleep tangled together, and in the mornings when we'd lie there, lazy, wrapped in warmth and sleep and each other. The massages didn't stop, by the way. If anything, they got better. Less about pressure points and more about knowing each other's bodies, learning how to touch without needing a reason. Sometimes we'd start with a massage and end up just lying there for hours, his head on my chest, my fingers in his hair, no words spoken. Sometimes we didn't stop at a massage, but that's another story. The point is, it started with something small, a sore back, a casual offer, a simple touch, and it turned into this. Something real, something rooted, something I didn't even know I needed until it was right in front of me. Now, when people ask how we got together, we just laugh and say, it started with a massage. But between you and me, it started way before that. It started the first time he looked at me like I was something he wanted to understand. The first time he leaned in, not knowing if I'd lean back. And I did. The rest was just everything we never let ourselves say out loud. Until we did. And now? Now he's home.